Hey guys, tough. So we're just gonna carry on. It's at this point that the tutorial is going to branch a little bit. As you see here, this is a Tartarus V2, not an orb weaver. So I'm going to have a separate set of videos for each device because the installation and mod is different. I'm not going to do more than those two, mostly because they're primarily what I get requests for, and they represent the two most common styles of what I call this side module here. This on the Tartarus V2 is most similar to a old Belkin N52 TE or the older Razer Nostromo. So it's going to be similar what you see with this device and those devices. This V2 happens to have an orb weaver style PCB underneath that actually makes this easier compared to an N52, but the disassembly and the cutting and the teensy placement and all that stuff is pretty much the same. So these are easy. Start with just pulling this little pad off, and you need a little bucket or something to put screws in. I like to stick the pads I pull off to something so they're just not loose, and this should be just as easy as this one screw here. This is all you should have to do unless you're doing like a keypad mod, in which you got to take the whole device apart. But just for the analog mod on the Tartarus and the N52 and the Nostromo, it should just be as easy as that. Yeah, so now this whole thing just kind of comes off. Do it carefully. Did I get that screw all the way out? Yeah, I did. Do it carefully because there are cables in here. You don't want to rip them. So just don't force anything. Just kind of work it until... Let's see if I can get that screw. There it is. All right, so I think that's all the screws I need. I'm just going to push that off to the side so I don't bump it. There we go. That's it. So what we're going to be doing today is messing with this circuit board right here. This is just the PCB that the buttons for this rocker switch are connected to, and this is the part that's similar to an orb weaver. An N52 doesn't have this. It does have a PCB here, but the design is quite a bit different, and it's discarded. With this, we're not going to discard this because it also drives the LEDs on the side. So just be really careful that you don't break anything. Like, you don't want to break any of the ribbon connectors like that or that. You certainly don't want to strip any screws, so just be careful. These ribbon connectors have these little tabs here. You just kind of pull that out with your fingernail or with a flathead screwdriver or with a sponger or whatever, a little electronic spatula. There, that's off, so you can actually move this whole thing away. That's nice and safe. So now we've just got this guy. And that's why I like the Tartarus V2s for the mod, because you end up, for the most part, just working with this as opposed to the entire thing. With the orb weaver, at some point, because of the way that the wires and stuff go, you eventually end up kind of having this huge device that you're having to baby while it's in pieces, but this is easier. So the next thing we want is to take these screws off. So there's one here, there's one there, and there's one hiding back there. And that should get us this PCB off, which we need. So let's just take those out, and they go into the bucket, screw bucket. 2, 3. That should be loose now. It is, and it wants to hold on. Let's take that off. Yes, up. just needed some elbow grease. So there we go. So you can see now, that's the button switch for, oops. So that thing that just fell off, for your reference, it goes here. So this whole piece right here kind of sits inside, and that holds it in. So we're just gonna pull it out since that fell out anyways. You'll see that on the reassembly. Let's put that in there. There could be another screw I'm just missing, or it's just sensitive. Yeah, we just need to work it. There it goes. Work it, work it. What else is holding that in place? There, perfect. There's a little tab at the top, so you definitely want to rock it and not yank it like that. Just rock it out and that'll come loose. You could also work a screwdriver up in there and pull that out. So what I want to do is pull this ribbon cable out here very carefully. Very carefully. These ribbon cables are very delicate. There. So now all we've got is this PCB. We need to take this this cover off to be able to get at the switches, because those need to go away. I like to use, you can use a screwdriver for this, but I like to use these needle nose. There are these plastic tabs on the bottom. This is really similar to the orb weaver. Right there and right there and right there. You just kind of squeeze them together and push. One. Oh, those went with it. Okay. It just comes off. So now you can see the switches underneath. Let's have a look at them. And those are nice switches. We're going to do our best to not ruin them. These switches are very heat sensitive. Those feel really good. So just be careful. I mean, there's not a whole lot you can do because the solder that they use is just really, really difficult to work with. I think it's lead-free solder, which, I mean, I know it is. They have to sell lead-free stuff. So the heat requirement to desolder it is pretty high. And sometimes it ruins the switch, but we're replacing them with a stick anyways, so shrug. So what we're doing, there are 2 legs per switch, so that means we've got 8 legs total, and you can see them here. So there's one there, 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 and there, and there, and there, and there's some other stuff on this board, like there's some diodes here and here, another switch over here. Just be careful when you're doing this that you don't knock anything off. There's the connector for the ribbon cable that looks like it's SMD soldered. Yeah, it's SMD. So if you slip and you hit those points and this comes loose, man, I don't know what to tell you. So just be careful. So what I'm going to use for this is a desoldering gun, which I've got. I'm going to sit down now and not stand up and look at the camera preview. It's a big unit, but it's basically a vacuum tip. Gets hot and lets me suck the solder out. And you treat it similar to a regular soldering iron. The tip should be tinned a little bit because you need heat transfer. And I like using this because the result is cleaner. You don't have to use one of these. I mean, they're expensive tools if you don't already have one. You could make do with a plunger. Those are cheaper. Or you could just use some wick. Or you could just hold your soldering iron on the points, which I tend to do at the tail end of it. You just kind of grab the switch and then hold the heat, and then you can kind of pull with your hand and work it out, and it'll eventually come. So either way is honestly fine, just as long as you don't knock anything off the board. So I like to add some solder, some of my solder to these points. I find that it tends to come loose easier when I do that. So I'm just heating up the joint and adding some of my solder, not a ton, because you don't want to have to work out a bunch of solder, and that lets it heat transfer better. Again, try to minimize the amount of time that you are holding the iron there, because if you are interested in preserving the switches, you need to reduce the amount of heat that that hits them. So I just find that adding some leaded solder to the mix here helps get the original solder out. And yeah, I'm just being careful to not hit anything else on the board. All right, let's work it now. So the trick with these is to get it on the point, and you flow it and you feel it move, you rotate it, and then you suck it out while continuing to rotate it. Give it a good suck. Pull it off, and profit, I guess. Sometimes it just doesn't work, which is often why I will end up, just like I said, you just kind of grab it, and it will work sometimes to kind of push the pin, push the leg with the iron. It gets hot on your finger, so you need to let go of it maybe sometimes. So it's all very hot, and this is such a pain in the butt because of the solder that Razer uses. And to get these switches on to begin with, they have the benefit of doing baths, solder baths that lets it all happen at once very, very quickly. So it's all automated, but for us DIYers, doing this outside of a factory is difficult. It's the reason why I do not like doing key switch mods on orb weavers, because you've got 20 switches and they die hard, man. I mean, they do not want to come out. I suppose you could always just cut these. I mean, you just trying to get it off. I'm being careful because I want to have this mod be reversible. Oh man, that's not coming. There we go. And so I got that switch out. Not ruined. Okay, you'll know that they're ruined if the heat ruined them, if they're squishy and they don't click anymore. Sometimes it happens. So then the next one, I'm gonna hold it on longer before I try to suck it out. Yeah, I'll think that. Don't think that did anything. Yeah. So as you can tell, having a sucker gun doesn't really make this a ton easier. It does make in the end, it does make it cleaner because I am able to remove solder. It does suck some, it just doesn't remove it all from inside the joint. So you could do this with just a regular iron. There, I get my fingernails under it now. You could do this all with just a regular iron and it would be fine. But I like the result of this, how clean it ends up coming out. All right, 2. Yeah, that one's squishy. Heat got to it. All right, that one's dead. That's just par for the course. The benefit here is that they are using branded switches, so these could be replaceable like pretty easily. The problem with like the Orb Weaver historically has been that it's difficult to source new switches that fit because they're not marked. But these are marked. I bet that I could find these. That's off camera, I just realized. Yeah, I'm sitting down and not looking because this is hot. I don't want to burn myself and I don't want to slip, so I'm not standing up looking through the camera preview. Sorry. I wonder how long it's been off camera. All right, there's 3. That one's good. Those 2 are good. Maybe this one cooled down. Nope, that one's just not. This is the last one. Just kind of pushing on that leg a little bit, not a lot, because you don't want to flex the board too much, but you just want to push it a little bit with heat on it so you can get your fingernails up underneath it and then pull it. It goes better to just apply heat and pull from the other side. I think I can now. All right. All right. It inches its way out. Well, inch, I mean, we're dealing with centimeters and millimeters here, not really inches. But it's close now. Man, that gets hot. You feel the heat kind of coming up underneath and into your fingernail bed, man. If I was smart, I would find a way to put a screwdriver under there without ruining anything, but sometimes I'm not smart. Okay, so there is all of them off. Let me see. Squishy. All right, so 2 ruined switches and 2 good switches. Okay. Anyways, so this board is cleaned. So you can see the result is pretty decent. Like, those pads are clean. I didn't ruin any pads. That's the benefit of using a gun like that. And there are open holes. So if we needed to put the switches back in with new switches, we could. That switch is still good. Heat didn't get to it. The ribbon cable connectors are fine. The diodes are still there. Cool. All right, so that's good. We're running up on 20 minutes, so I'm going to be done. But that shows you how to kind of disassemble the side module of a Tartarus V2 and clean off this PCB. What's going to happen the goal here, this is where that original stick came up out of, or the stick. It's a 4-way D-pad. This mounts like this. Right? And you can see that gap in there. So our cup will come down through the hole we're going to cut and rest about 2 millimeters above that. Where is the thingy? There's the thingy. So there it is. It's a tight fit. Actually, that might be shallower than what's in the orb weaver. We're just gonna have to see. But next up will be measuring and cutting this. So in order for the stick cup to fit, we are going to have to cut. So this is with a template. If you're going to buy a template, you'll use that to guide your cutting. I'll show you how to do that. But this lets you see through, because I made it somewhat transparent, and draw your lines and cut that out. And if we look on the back side, we're going to end up cutting a lot of that away. So this may actually have to get pretty creative in terms of how this PCB is handled. What I'm probably going to have to do, because these screw hole legs are going to go away because of what we're cutting out. We are going to have to put the cup in and seat this PCB flush against the bottom of the cup, probably with some hot glue, and that's what will keep it in place. There is a screw hole here on this right here that will stay, that will keep it centered. How does it go? Keep it centered for this push button. Goes like that. So that screw and this ribbon cable, those are all gonna be there still. Anyways, so we'll look at that next. That'll be next. Anyways, I hope this helps you disassemble your Tartarus and clean off your PCB. And next up, we'll be looking at cutting and seating the stick cup. All right, guys. Thanks. Catch you later.